that everybody is aware of, and it's already been referred to, is the landfill tax. And so what we've seen, it was introduced to try to discourage just throwing material into landfills. And at first it was £1 a tonne every year, it went up £1 a tonne, it was pretty ineffective. But then it got ramped up to £8 a tonne, and now we've got the prospect of it being at £80 a tonne in a couple of years' time. And that has become the major driver, other than there's been some other governmental requirements on the local authorities in terms of allowances they've had to landfill, which has also driven in that direction. But it's now being recognised that the big driver is landfill tax, and that will be the main thing moving forward. The impact of all of that in terms of active waste that's been going into the landfill is that it's been falling off. And indeed, we've then had a downturn in the economy, and that's exacerbated that. So we've seen quite a major downturn in landfill. So in terms of business opportunities, say, oh, well, maybe the waste is falling away. Is there such an opportunity there? Well, no, it's actually still very good prospect, because, in fact, if you actually look at the forecast moving forward, we've got a couple of factors to take into account. Firstly, we've had a change in the demographics in this country, and whereas if we go back about 10 years ago, we had a decreasing population, today actually we have an increasing population in the UK, and of course people produce waste and discarded materials. The other thing, if we actually look at the commercial industrial scene, in fact the collective wisdom says that moving forward we think it will actually remain fairly static. So, overall, we've got, if we base what we do in business terms on the material we have before us, in some form or the other, we've got a pretty constant situation to deal with. And of course, in all of that, what we have is still quite a lot of it going into the landfills. So, if you like, we've still got around about 24 million tonnes going into the landfills. We've got landfill diversion targets. We've got fewer landfills to deal with. We've got energy security issues. We've got to deal with climate change. And we've got the recession at the moment, but, actually that recession will finish at some point in the future. We hope in the near future. And then we've got oil price pressures. So in fact, there's a maelstrom there. There's the perfect storm. And where you have these sorts of issues, you usually have good business opportunities. Part of that is reflected in energy from waste, and certainly in terms of the capital intensity, that's where a lot of the focus has got to be. And I won't go over the numbers, the slides will be available, but in fact all the predictions are that we're going to see more energy recovery in some form or the other as we move forward, because that material that's going into the landfills still has to be dealt with. So what I'd like to do, moving on from the market position, which I see as being actually still a very, very good prospect moving forward, is to go into a couple of examples and the type of things that I see for the future. And that we can divide that into two areas. One is actually in terms of the material recovery side, and the other is in terms of the energy recovery side of the business. Thanks to, on this one, to Peter Jones. Peter Jones came up with what he tried to do, because his background was an economist, was actually to come out with what he called a resource hierarchy. And I put it on here, really, because maybe it stimulated a little bit of discussion. What he tried to do was to rank, the value added that we can actually get from the various processes. But if you look at them, what you actually see, if we look back to the way that we dealt with this material in the past compared to the sorts of processes moving forward, we're starting to see a shift in the technologies And so we're moving into another era, I believe. At the moment, a lot of the materials being exported, and I think there's a lot of opportunity here. So in terms of recyclate, because Europe as a whole has actually lost a lot of its manufacturing capacity, and if you're manufacturing goods, you want to package them, so therefore you make the packaging alongside your manufacturing. You don't actually shift packaging around. So the more effective way of dealing with things on recyclates and things like that is to shift it to the point of manufacture. So what we've seen, and we are very dependent on, is actually exporting a lot of our recyclables. I think we now recognise that we've got to introduce more manufacturing back into the Western world, into this country particularly, and so there's an opportunity to shift there. The other thing that's going on at the moment has been a movement in fuels, and I put SRF. I think a lot of the stuff actually that's being applied to a license for exporting isn't what I call SRF. It's merely shred. But we are seeing an export of material, and in doing that, what we are actually doing is shifting out our energy resource abroad. And I think there's a big opportunity to do something there. Now, we kind of pride ourselves on our recycling. The government position is, well, we're over 40% recycling. But if you actually look at it, and I just use plastics as an example here, it's only by way of example, actually there's still a long way to go. And if there's a long way to go, this is the league table within Europe, that means there's a lot of opportunity there. So there's still a lot of untapped opportunity in this marketplace. One example has been closed loop, and I'm sticking with the plastics for the moment, where in fact what we've seen is recycling plastics back into food grade plastic, where like Coca-Cola bottles and things like that, closed loop deal with PET and some HDPE, and in fact Veolia supplies a lot of that material to them. And this has been a move which only probably 10 years ago you say is impossible. You can't use recycled plastics in food-containing products, food packaging. Another late innovation that indeed Veolia has actually brought in has been on the plastics recycling, because not all plastic is the same. In fact, there's about 8 polymers that are in popular use, and if actually you're going to recycle those polymers, you have to be very careful. You can't mix at the chemical level, you can't mix those polymers, so you've got to be able to sort them. And what we've seen come forward over the years, scanning techniques are now very much to the fore. We have used near-infrared in just about all of our sorting plants in the MRF, and we've just installed in Berkshire a sorting plant that in one go will actually separate out 4 of those 8 plastic polymers and identify it just on a continuous process. And this is a thing called Magpie. Another innovation, sometimes in all this business you get unintended consequences. One of the things that's happened in packaging has been the Courtauld commitment, where all those that are the retailers that are using packaging have agreed to reduce the weight of packaging they use. Now, when they were packaging things in cans, for example, our MRFs were designed to detect them. We could pick them, those cans up, extract them, recycle the material. In order to lightweight the packaging, what's happened is that they've moved into laminate pouches and foils, etc. What actually happens is that the aluminium within that material actually passes all the way through the MRF because it's seen as a reject. So whilst the intention has been good to lightweight our packaging, what we've actually done is the packaging that's there, we're now dumping it back in the landfill. Unintended consequence. You'll hear from Enval this morning. Enval have a method of actually recovering that laminate packaging, and we can recover the aluminium and we can recover the plastic, and I won't say anything more today. Another example has been with Solvert, and again Chris You'll hear from him, so I won't say too much about solver. But here we're talking about organic waste, and you know, the thinking in the past has been, oh,